what interests me the most about his story is how he turned a puppet into a hustle.
So coming into stand-up, I was kind of like a student of the game before I even got into it. So I was well aware of the fact that the stand-up hustle is a very slow hustle.
How that business works.
2 years just to even see my first comedy money, and I was only $25. Like
yeah. But to you, for somebody to pay you to do that, that's got to be huge, right? Like first making your first $20, 25, whatever, $100, just to get that kind of money initially, that's got to be huge for you as an artist.
It's almost like in music where you hear like all these new rappers and you're just like, they all kind of sound the same, but they all kind of copying off each other and feeding off that same energy. But then after a while, you'll notice they'll come out with that one hit song where it's like, all right, now that's his real sound, that's his voice. Like,
you're back for another episode of the Hustle Man Show. I want to welcome you back. So we got a lot of different kinds of people on the show in the past. We've had business owners on there. We've had artists on here. We've had people that own grow farms in California. All right. But one thing we've never had, one thing we probably won't have again in the near future, unless it's this guy again, is a puppeteer. All right. When I found out about this guy on Instagram, I was automatically hooked. I followed this guy's content for about a year and a half. I think he's hilarious. I think a lot of people agree. Very, very entertaining guy. Very cool dude. Overall, just a good guy, that I got to know him. But what interests me the most about his story is how he turned a puppet into a hustle. So, naturally, launching this podcast, I have to have my man on here. I got my man, none other than Joselito, the Puppeteer. What's good, man? What's good? Is that intro cool for you? Do people normally just go by Joselito when they're talking to you, or do they introduce you in a different way?
Yeah. No, everybody calls me Joselito, so that's no problem. I don't have an identity crisis.
All right.
But that was a smooth intro.
Good. So listen, you know the show. I don't know if you got an opportunity to listen to one of the podcasts or anything like that. But
I heard one of the first episodes, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. So the premise of the show is to get people on here that are they've taken whatever route that they've had in life in order to build a business for themselves. What you do is very, very interesting. It's interesting for me, definitely. And it's also interesting to a lot of different people. So yeah. I wanted to get you on here, really, pull that back a bit and get an understanding of how you got into this thing. So how do you go from like picking up a puppet to turn it into a real hustle, man? I think that's a very interesting thing that people want to know about.
Okay, so to fully explain the whole Joselito journey, we got to start with myself. So I started as a stand-up comedian first, just as myself, no puppet act or anything. So I started back in, I want to say like late 2006, early 2007, doing stand-up. I was doing stand-up for about like 5 years. And then around like 2012, beginning of 2012, I started noticing the trend of the online comedy with the videos and the skits were becoming popular. So I actually had a buddy of mine from, because I'm actually originally from Boston. I live in New York now. So I was coming up in the comedy game in Boston, and I had a buddy of mine who I had been doing comedy for like 5 years at this point. He had just started like doing comedy. And then he came to like one of my shows to kind of check me out and kind of like get like some pointers for me. And then like 6 months later, I see this kid got like 40,000 followers on Instagram. He's like getting booked for all these shows. And I'm like, yo, what the hell is this kid doing? Like,
for sure.
Instagram and Facebook videos. So I was like noticing like, okay, like this is kind of like a little wave now that can kind of get people, some traction and attention. So I started doing videos as myself. My stage name when I was doing my regular comedy was Woody Wood. So I was doing videos as myself on YouTube and Facebook. They really wasn't hitting like that. And then one day I was just brainstorming ideas at my house, and my daughter was with me, and she was watching Little Puppet on Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
It was called Crash and Bernstein was the name of the show she was watching. But it reminded me of a show that I used to watch when I was younger, and it was called My Cousin Skeeter. And I kind of just like the whole premise of the puppet being around humans, and the puppet was kind of like his own person, like even though everybody around him was a human.
Yeah.
So I was like, what if I came out with a Puerto Rican puppet, did the same thing, you know, kind of swag them out with the clothes, and you know, just have everybody, all my boys around them and stuff. So I literally that same night I Googled Puerto Rican puppet, and Joselito popped up, and his name was already Jose.
Huh.
So I added the Lito, because in Spanish Lito means little, so it's like
Right.
little Jose would be like
Right.
the translation of his name. And then I just started doing skits with him, and then at first I was doing them sporadically, like maybe like every month I'd put out a video on YouTube, and they were getting better views than I was getting as myself, but I was still more focused on my stand-up until the summer of 2015. No, I'm sorry, 2016. I one of my videos went crazy viral on Facebook. I caught 1 million views overnight, and then
That's
from
crazy.
there, I started putting all my attention into Joselito.
Yeah, I see him. So your wave on your own before picking up the puppet. You're doing like stand up. Like, what are you doing exactly? Like for 5 years, you said before you really picked up a puppet and you were inspired by your daughter, which was really dope, by the way. How do you do, like, what were you doing in that time frame before you picked that up? Because 5 years is a long time, right? A lot of people could have quit in that time frame, right? A lot of people were like, listen, you know, this may not be working for me. I could go on and do something else. You stuck with it. So what was going on in that time frame that made you think like, I can keep going?
Okay, so like before, like I said, when I started stand up, this was all pre social media days.
Uh-huh.
So there was no such thing as like I said, like the video just blowing up overnight.
Sure.
And so coming into stand up, I was kind of like a student of the game before I even got into it. So I was well aware of the fact that the stand up hustle is a very slow hustle. So like when I was at my 5 year point, like you're still a baby. Like Jerry Seinfeld has a famous quote that a lot of comedians say that like in stand up, you're as old as how many years you've been doing it.
Yeah.
So at 5 years in, you're only a 5-year-old baby still. Like, you know, like
Yeah.
you don't really hit your stride in stand up until like your 10-year mark. And then that's when guys are there's like levels to it. So when you first get into stand up, you're considered an open micer. You go to open mics, you're trying to get your voice, you're trying to get your jokes together. After about a year or two, you know, if you're going on the right path, you should be what they call an opener. So like an opener on a stand-up show, there's usually three comedians. There's the headliner, which is the main guy that everybody's coming to see. There's a feature, which is the guy that goes right before the headliner. And then there's an opener, which would be the guy that comes on first. And then you have your host. So after about 2 years, you become an opener if you're, you know, making good traction in the scene and stuff, and you're progressing. So when you're an opener, you're making like anywhere from like 20 to 50 bucks a night for like a 5 to 10 minute set.
So
Then
not,
the next step
so you're not making $1 million a night initially.
yeah, I still have my day job. Like I said, it's a grind. And then so at your 5 year point, which was out where I was at before the Joselito thing, now you're that point, you're like a feature. So that's considered like a middler. So you get anywhere from like 100 to 150 bucks for a 20-minute set. And then you're trying to work your way to become a headliner. Once you're a headliner, you're making about 300 or 500 bucks a show, and you're doing 45 minutes to an hour. But if you have a big name and you could, you know, get asses in the seats,
Sure.
then obviously that number dramatically increases. But if you're just like a local headliner, nobody really knows your name, but you're hilarious, you've been in the game for a while,
Yeah,
you could get like 300 to 500 bucks. So that's what I was working towards. I was trying to get that headliner spot. But then the Joselito stuff took off, and that kind of just leapfrogged me to the headliner spot, you know, years before I probably would have made it on my own.
that's dope, bro. I was glad to have you on here before this, but understanding how the numbers work and understanding how like the circuit works. So you was like you was really going around like really doing these clubs, these spots for 5 years.
I was. I had a couple clubs that what comedy clubs do is they put the comedians on a roster.
Yeah.
So if you're a good comedian, every comedy club probably got like a roster of 20 comedians, and you know every weekend they'll pick 5 of those guys to come and work for them. Like if once you become part of, that's what you want to work towards, being on the roster of a comedy club, because now you on that recurring. It's almost like a job. You on the shift, the payroll. So it's like, all right, now you got guaranteed work at least once a week or every 2 weeks. You got guaranteed work from this one club, and that's what you're trying to do. Just build up that rapport with different comedy clubs, trying to get on their roster, trying to get different shows and stuff. Another thing that gets comedians some traction is doing a lot of like contests or festivals.
Yeah.
So like similar to like, you ever heard of like Rolling Loud for music?
I've heard of it before.
So it's like a festival. So comedy has our own version of that. So there's one, the biggest one there is in Montreal. It's called the Montreal Comedy Festival. And then they got ones like individual ones like New York City Comedy Festival, Boston Comedy Festival. So you enter into these festivals. The farther you get, it's almost like a mini Last Comic Standing type of thing. Like, the farther you get, now you got agents in the crowd, you got other club owners.
Sure, it's like a rap battle. It's like a rap battle for comedians.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you get that little credit too. Like, I was a finalist, like me per se, I was a finalist in 3 contests, the Boston Comedy Festival and then the New England Comedy Festival, where I made it to the finals. Didn't win the whole thing, but that got my name locally buzzing a little more, was able to get more bookings from that and stuff like that.
That's dope. There's a lot of insight there on how that business works. How do you decide?
Bro. Like, honestly, the stand-up, you really gotta love stand-up comedy or comedy in general to stick with it. Cause like you said, like people think they're gonna get on stage and within 2 weeks they're the next Kevin Hart, but it's not that easy.
Nah.
Like, like I said, it's that saying, that famous saying, it takes 10 years to make overnight success.
Yeah.
That's like so true, especially in the comedy game. Cause it could take you 10 years just to, like, it took me 2 years just to even see my first comedy money, and that was only $25. Like,
yeah. But to you, like, for somebody to pay you to do that, that's got to be huge, right? Like first making your first $20, 25, whatever, $100, just to get that kind of money initially, that's got to be huge for you as an artist. I mean, well,
I actually, with me, I got it all at once. So it was like I got my first money because I had won a round in a contest that I was in. So I won like a prize, I think it was like 25 or $50 that they gave me. But then I made it to the final round and I lost. I came in 3rd place. But then after the show, the club owner came to me and she was like, "Oh, you did so good." She was like, "I'm gonna put you on the roster as an opener." Yeah. She was like, "Now I'm gonna pay you $25." And then and it's not just even you're getting 25, but it's not even just for your comedy, because then as the opener, you're still like so low on the totem pole that they got you doing all the little random stuff too, like seating people before they get in, taking the tickets at the front door. Like,
it's like you're an intern in an organization.
Exactly.
Bro.
Yeah.
That's what it is. You got to put your time in.
Yeah, and then you get to the you get on stage and everybody's like, "Didn't you just take my ticket at the door?" Like,
yeah. So you decide to become a comic, bro. Like, what? How does somebody do that? Like, how do they mentally decide, like, this is what I want to do? Like, I heard Jerry Seinfeld's story. I just watching, his growth over the years, and he comes from a wealthy family. Like, he comes from he's got a decent background. So he decides to do that. It's straight love. Like, he doesn't need to do that, but he does that because he wants to. How do you decide, like, mentally to go into this field where it's like super competitive like this?
It's funny you say that too, because especially when I was coming up in Boston, there's so many guys like that. Like, they don't necessarily need to do it. They come from money.
Yeah.
And sometimes it actually benefits those guys because they got the time. They don't have to, like me per se, I still had to maintain a full-time job. Sure. I had a daughter, you know what I'm saying? So it was like I had to miss out on certain shows because I would have to work or I had to take care of, the family stuff. So sometimes it benefits those guys because they get to they got all the free time and they got, trust fund or mommy and daddy paying for their rent and bills and,
Sure.
So they got all the time in the world to work on their comedy. But for me, I always wanted to be a stand-up comedian ever since I was like 8, 9 years old. I was just I used to watch a lot of stand-up with my stepfather at the time. like Eddie Murphy, John Leguizamo. Like this was like in the 90s, early 90s. And Live in Color. I like love the Wayans brothers. Yeah, I like love the Wayans brothers. Jamie Foxx show, like all those shows. Came up watching all them.
Were you
Comedy Jam was
like
another
the
big influence.
were you like the class
remember,
clown in class in
yeah,
school?
I was always getting named the class clown.
You just wanted to be
Actually,
that came natural to you. Yeah, that came natural to you. That whole be the center of attention type of thing.
Yeah, that always came natural to me, and busting jokes on the spot. And
that's dope.
And when I was coming up too, it was big with the Yo Mama jokes. You had to be quick on your feet with the Yo Mama jokes back in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And my first time ever doing stand-up was for a talent show at my high school. I was a junior in high school, but I was straight fugazi. I was so young, like all I did was like remix. I pulled like a P. Diddy move. I remixed a bunch of jokes that I had heard on like BET Comic View and like and Def Comedy Jam.
Put it on replay.
Yeah, and I kind of remixed them into my own because I didn't really know what I was doing. I was like 15 at the time. But I ended up winning third place on that. And then I graduated high school a few years later, and I had a job at like a youth center back home in Boston. And one of my supervisors, like you said, I was always cracking jokes at work and, just always goofy with it. And one of my supervisors was like, my one of my cousins is a stand-up comedian. She was like, I'm gonna see if I could get you on one of the shows, because I know you've been wanting to get your feet wet with stand-up like professionally, because all I had done at that point was the talent show. And she was like, I was like, okay. She came in the next day. I didn't really think she was gonna be able to do it. I like kind of forgot about it. And she came in the next day and she was like, Sunday, you got 5 minutes. And I'm like, what? I was like, oh shoot. So that was like my first show. And I spent the whole rest of the week writing jokes and trying to like figure out what my set was gonna be. And I went, I did the show. She had picked me up, did the show, and I did like so good. Like I did better than I had expected I was gonna do. To the point where the lady that runs the show or whatever came up to me after the show, because I didn't tell her that it was my first time doing comedy.
Yeah.
I wanted to keep it a secret. So when I was on stage, I actually mentioned it like, yo, thank you guys for laughing. This was my first time. I was nervous. So she came up to me after the show and she's like, oh my God, I can't believe that was your first time. She was like, I haven't seen somebody that funny on their first time since Dane Cook.
Wow.
Dane Cook is actually from Boston as well. If people don't know, he's a big time comedian too.
Sure.
And so I got gassed in the head. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm out of here. So the next week, she's like, come back next week. You got to come back next week. So I come back next week. And like I said, I'm still such a rookie in the game that I didn't know that stand-up comedians use the same material over and over again.
Yeah.
And they building up a set. Like I'm thinking like the audience thinks like every time you come, they
gotta have something new.
Fly off the head and there's always new jokes. So I'm sitting there waiting for my turn backstage, and there's a couple guys from the week before, and they're all telling the same jokes. And I'm like, look at these guys, they suck. I'm like, they still telling the jokes from last week.
What they're doing is
that and I bombed with my new batch of jokes. I bombed like so hard.
Because the jokes didn't hit the same. And
the jokes didn't hit the same. And then but I'm glad it happened that way in that order, because I think if I had bombed the first time, I would have never came back. But the fact that I did so well the first time and then bombed the second time, it gave me the motivation to say like, all right, I have the potential, but now I just need to learn the ropes of the behind the scenes and how it works, because obviously it's a consistency thing, So that was the process from there, was trying to like become a better stand-up.
That initial time that you went, right? And you just got that kind of rush, that high, right, from being on stage and just kind of doing your thing. Was that the moment you were hooked, or were you hooked before that?
Well, I was hooked before it when I did it for the talent show in high school. Sure. But yeah, when I did it for the actual comedy club, it was different. It was definitely a different rush, because I don't know, it was different because I was already a little popular in high school and known as like the funny guy.
Yeah.
So and it's kind of easier to make high school kids laugh. It's like everything's goofy.
Yeah. But to be up there on a stage in front of all those people is a completely different scenario.
Yeah, I was standing up there in front of grown adults. And, it was like a real comedy club. Like people paid to come and see it. So I'm like, Oh man, but it's a rush, and most stand-ups will say it's like once you get that first taste, it's almost like they say it's like a drug. Like you want to keep that that laughter, like that laughter drug coming, because after the show you do feel like $1,000,000. Like, oh my god, like I just made 200 people just laugh their ass off.
Bro, comedy as a business is crazy. It is crazy. I mean, I mean, the business of comedy is just such an interesting business. It really is. You said something about like asses in seats. What is a great headliner? What does a great headliner get in terms of asses in seats? How many people should somebody that's a really, really good headliner be able to bring into a room? I'm not talking about Kevin Hart status. I'm talking about a solid comedian.
Okay, so a solid comedian, I would say anywhere from 4 to 500.
People?
Like somebody that's been making the rounds, like like you said, not on that Kevin Hart level. But what a lot of comedians do. Okay, so for example, like there's a guy based out of New York. He's a comedian and a friend of mine. His name is Godfrey. I don't know if you've heard of him. He has a podcast too. But like somebody like him will fill out like a 400. Like Caroline's. I don't know if you've heard of Caroline's in New York.
No, I haven't.
So that's like one of the middle clubs where it's like, you're not doing the Garden, Madison Square Garden. You're hitting Caroline. So like a Tracy Morgan, like I said, a Godfrey, guys like that. They come through there.
What's capacity on that?
Michael Blackson. Their capacity is like around 500.
500
but
people.
What those guys will do is they'll come and they'll do like a whole weekend showcase. It's called the Showcase. So they'll do like 2 shows Friday night, 2 shows Saturday night, 2 shows Sunday night. So in total, they're doing 6 shows, selling each one out 500. So, by the end of the weekend, they probably brought out like a good 2,000 to 3,000 people.
That's crazy, bro.
Yeah. So like for myself, I'm not on their level yet, but I'm past like the local headliner. The most I've ever brought out was 600 people in one night. And then, you do the math, depending on the name, like the bigger names charge more per ticket. They're charging like $40-$50 a ticket. Me, myself, I charge like $20-$25 a ticket. Most comedy clubs, what they do is they give you a percentage of the door. So you get anywhere from like 60 to 80% of the door, depending on the comedy club. And then, so, you do the math, like me per se on the lower end, you get, if I could get a bad show for me would be 50 people. Only 50 people showed up, but I would still walk away with $1,000 for the night.
Bro, 50 people is a lot of people. That's crazy.
Yeah. But and that's on the lower side, like, because normally I average between 150 to like 200 people a show.
Wow.
So I usually make anywhere from like 2,000 to 5,000 a night. If on the good end, then you add in the merch sales at the end of the night. If you got merch, that could be like another 1,000 to 1,500 on top of everything. So yeah, sometimes you can make some really, really good money if you got a name for yourself and you can get the asses in the seats. And then the comedy clubs, that's all they really care about is if you fill in the seats up. They don't even particularly care if you're a good comedian. Like,
they just want people on the door. They're making their money on liquor sales.
Yeah, and then that's the big beef right now too in the behind the scenes comedy world.
Sure.
Because it's funny because I kind of walk a thin line between both because I started in stand-up, took it to social media, and I kind of leveraged both. But you got your traditional stand-up guys who, like I said earlier, work 10, 15 years to become a headliner, and then they see some 18-year-old kid,
an influencer,
within 3 months, they got 1 million followers, and they're packing out shows, and they don't know how to do a lick of stand-up. Like, they're up there bombing in front of 500 people, but the comedy club don't care because the kid just brought 500 people out, like,
Yeah.
But the OGs of the stand-up are looking at you crazy, like, why, you know what I'm saying? Like, what's the difference? Why can't I do it? It's like, well, you can't get 500 people in the place. Like,
so how do you navigate this situation, this whole COVID situation? Because it sounds like those doing those shows is a big deal between getting the bodies in the doors, getting that percentage, and then at the same time doing like the merch sales and everything. Because you got a merch table, you're set up over there to sell. How do you navigate that through this whole COVID situation?
Well, I lost out. I lost out on 25,000. I had to cancel a 20 city tour. I had just signed with a new booking agency at the beginning of the year, based out of LA. So I have two agencies I work with. One's based out of New York, and then the other one's based out of LA. I just signed with the second one out of LA because my excuse me, my New York agency was having trouble getting me booked on the West Coast. So he linked me with a different agency that was based out of the West Coast to try to get me more exposure out there. So we, between my two agencies, we lined up a 20 city tour that was gonna start at the beginning of April and end at the end of May.
Yeah.
And that's when the whole COVID stuff came in March. So I didn't even get a chance to even start my tour. I did one last show in Philly, which was March 7th, and then I had to cancel my whole tour because it was going to be sponsored by Live Nation, which
Yeah,
is like
yeah,
a
yeah.
big
That's big.
promotion.
That's
Yeah,
big.
it's like a big promotional company. So they was going to sponsor my tour, but now Live Nation doesn't want to touch any shows until 2021. So right now I'm just starting to get my feet wet with some shows here and there, that I've been booking in the states that are fully open now. Like just did a show in Milwaukee, just did a show in Chicago. Um, got another batch of shows coming up in Florida next month. Um, so I'm just kind of playing it by ear as certain cities and states are opening up. I'm like, promoters are reaching me out and trying to book me again. So my agents trying to get me booked again, and just kind of taking it day by day. Ever since the COVID stuff, I just kind of flipped it more and been focusing more on my social media and online stuff.
Bro, you're very much like a hybrid of like influencer and stand up. Being able
Yeah,
to, yeah,
yeah,
bro, what I've noticed based on this influencer vibe, what I've noticed was that some of these guys, they can't transition over to stand up, and it feels like to me, based on what I see, like stand up is really where it's at, because then you
yeah,
get
yeah.
bodies in the door. That's where the money's at. So
I be trying to tell guys that
yeah,
because what it is with the Instagram guys is, like I said, they I kind of just came up in an era where it was like I said, I started stand up when there was no social media, and then I started coming into my own when social media was also coming into its own. So
right.
I was kind of blessed in that way where I kind of just was a right time at the right place type of thing, like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
because I got a taste of both, and I'm able to blend them both. But I be trying to tell guys that all the time from both. I be trying to tell the stand up guys, you need to get on social media and get your social media presence up, so then you can leverage the stand up, more. And I'll be trying to tell the social media guys, start working on stand up. But it's one of those things where guys, they feel more comfortable in one than the other, and they don't really realize, because the thing with the Instagram and the social media guys is that you fall in love with the other type of money you get from there, which is like club appearances, club hostings, um, promotional skits. They do skits and stuff.
Sure.
Some of the guys get branded by big companies, where big companies will sponsor them just to do certain amount of skits per year or whatnot. So some of them guys are already making a decent amount of money online, where they don't really think about the stand-up stuff or even realize that they can make so much money doing stand-up. But I be trying to tell people all the time, like I said, from both, which is funny because I'm in both. So I tell the stand-up guys, like, yo, get on social media, man. Like, they be like, I don't know how you guys do it. And then the same thing with the social media guys. They're like, I don't know how you can do the stand-up.
Bro, stand up is not easy, man. Getting up there in front of a stage, being live in front of all those people, and having a routine, a set, it's not an easy thing to do. I mean,
Yeah.
great comics, they make it look easy, but it's not really easy at all. You got to have something
Yeah.
that you perfected over the years, and like you said, you spent 5 years before you got some kind of momentum doing it. So I'm sure that's not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
So
No, it's true.
let me ask you a question. You're building this thing. Like what's next for you, bro?
Oh man,
You got do you think like that? Like, all right, so right now I'm doing like these, like I'm touring, I'm going to this state. I'm building up on that. Like I have a long-term play or a long-term plan. Does that cross your mind?
Yeah. I mean, because of the whole COVID stuff, it kind of like sidetracked my whole plan, because I definitely did have a plan of action for this year that me and my agencies were talking about, and we had a the original plan was to do the 20 city tour. We was gonna film the whole thing, put together a little demo for Netflix, because we was trying to pitch a stand-up special as Joselito to Netflix.
That's dope.
So we was trying to, kind of show the presence that we have, the online presence. We also have the in-person presence of, being able to do a 20 city tour, get people to come out, show show all that behind the scenes stuff of how people interact with Joselito, and get the stand-up footage together. And that was the original plan. That's still in motion too, but we just gotta wait till we can get back on the road. But in the meantime, I'm just been trying to like I said, maintain the social media presence, because it all goes hand in hand. So trying to just keep the followers climbing, trying to keep the views going up, trying to get all that.
Bro, whatever it is that you're doing, it's working. I'm a fan. I mean that, bro. I'm a fan. I love the account, man. I watch it regularly. I mean, it's dope. For the people that don't know what your handle is on IG, just hit them with it real quick. That way they know that, and we'll add that in the description of this video.
Yeah, of course. It's D, the letter D, Puppet Joselito, Joselito, and that's on everything, on all social media platforms. You can actually Google me too, Joselito the Puppet, and everything will pop up as well.
You got a YouTube channel where you put stuff up?
Yeah, my YouTube is up. I got about 25K subscribers on my YouTube as well.
Dope.
That was another form of income for me, but I actually got demonetized recently because my content is just too sexual.
Crazy. Crazy. With a puppet.
Because of the puppet. Yeah. But yeah, I still post on there regularly because I have a lot of fans that don't have regular social media like Facebook or nothing like that. So they only watch me on YouTube. So I try to repost all my videos from social media onto YouTube as well.
That's dope. So for somebody that's watching this right now, and they're like you know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, starting off in the comedy scene, what advice would you give them?
If they starting off in comedy right now?
Yeah. They're just getting their feet wet. They're at the same point that you were when you went to that first show.
I would tell them, like I've been saying throughout the podcast, is don't be afraid to try all avenues of comedy. Get your feet wet with the stand-up, get your feet wet with the social media and the videos and stuff. Start a podcast. See what fits you best, but don't don't just X out something just because that's not for me, because you never know which one is gonna take off. Like
for sure.
With me, for instance, started in stand-up, but then the videos set me off, and now I was able to bring it back to the stand-up, so it all comes full circle when it comes to comedy. Another thing I would say is just try to stay as original as possible. Try to stay away, from the cliche stuff, cliche jokes, because I noticed personally, it takes people a while to find their voice in comedy. That's what it's called, like when you because in the beginning, it's like everybody's you're just kind of copying what you think comedy is.
You're filling it out.
Yeah, if you love Kevin Hart, your first couple of shows, you're probably gonna be sounding just like Kevin Hart. Like,
for sure.
Like for me, when I first started, I used to always get Eddie Murphy, but it was weird because I would get, you sound like Donkey from Shrek, which to me was Eddie Murphy. So I'm like
well, you're mimicking these people, which is a form of flattery, right?
Yeah,
you look at them and that's what you want to be.
And then that's on you, yeah. It's almost like in music where you hear like all these new rappers and you're just like, they all kind of sound the same, but they all kind of copying off each other and feeding off that same energy. But then after a while, you'll notice they'll come out with that one hit song where it's like, all right, now that's his real sound, that's his voice. Like that's how it is in comedy too. It's like once you kind of feel yourself out and experiment with jokes, because like for me, for instance, I noticed once I started being more personal and coming up with stories that really happened to me, like those always get the best reaction, like
they're authentic.
As opposed to trying to do like the cliche, like right now, like a lot of comedians like to do the current event stuff,
right?
Like the presidency stuff or whatever's in the news. which, you know, that stuff gets, it'll get a laugh here and there, but then that has a time limit to it too, because now you can only say it for so many shows before now. That's last month's news.
Sure.
Nobody wants to hear about that. Like,
sure.
So when you speak from your own personal experiences, there's no time frame on that. You could have one joke that's really good and use it for 20 years if it's that good. Like, you know, like
yeah, the truth in comedy is timeless. Right? Yeah, that's what makes a joke. That's why you can watch like an Eddie Murphy skit on YouTube from like forever ago and the shit's still funny. It's timeless like comedy.
1985.
Yeah. That's some of the best stuff that I like to watch. Some of the older stuff, Murphy stuff is crazy. So if people want to support you, they want to support what you're doing, where can they go? Do you have a website where you sell that dope hat? You have a website where you sell some merch and stuff like that?
Of course. It's puppetwave.com, www.puppetwave.com for any merchandise. If you guys want to support as well, you can hit up my OnlyFans page, OnlyFans.com/Joselito the Puppet. It's only $5 a month for exclusive skits and content on there. And you could check out my social media pages for updates on my shows. See when I'm coming to your town. Come check out a live show.
That's dope.
Or, check out my videos as well. Everything counts, man. Every view, every like, every comment. So that's the best way to support, and it's free.
What I notice about you, bro, is you're very, very smart. You don't give up any opportunities. You leave a lot of this stuff on the table, and that's something that you don't always see in content creators. Sometimes they limit themselves mentally to a certain box. You're smart enough to know that no matter what scenario, there's an opportunity that presents itself. And this opportunity that I currently have right now may not be like forever. And I need to make sure that I'm in every box. So based on just what I'm hearing from you, you do the merch, you do the stand-up, you do the influencer thing, you do the meet and greets. I mean, you drove all the way down from like, what was it, Boston or New York to come down here? Oh, Queens.
Yeah, Queens.
Yeah, Queens. There you go. That's
big.
I'm
in Queens now. I moved to New York recently.
Big. That's big.
Yeah.
So if you guys are watching this, I got Joselito the Puppeteer. All right. Is that what people call you, the Puppeteer? Like how do you go by? What do you go by? The comedian.
The puppet master.
Puppet master. Word. So if you guys want to check out his page, you want to check out his Instagram, it's going to be in the description section of this video. Very, very dope story, bro. Turning a puppet into a hustle because you noticed your daughter was watching that and she was entertained by that. That's crazy to me, bro. Like that's something that's gonna resonate with me, definitely.
I think I'm actually the first of my kind too that I know of. I've not seen, because most comedians either do ventriloquism,
right?
Which I'm not. Like you said, I'm a puppeteer.
Yeah.
So I'm not there with Joselito, throwing my voice. I'm behind the puppet stage.
Yeah.
And it's like it's the puppet is a stand-up comedian. So I feel like that's the first of its kind too. So that's what makes it a little different and special too.
There's so many of these guys. There's Jeff Dunham, right? There's the Muppets guy. The guy that used to do
Jim Henson.
Yeah. It's a big thing, but not many people are doing it in our communities.
Yeah,
that's not big. Yeah.
It's funny too, because like before it's funny that you say the puppeteer and the puppet master, because people think I'm like this big like puppet freak. And it's like, I'm like, before Joselito, I could care less about puppets.
Yeah.
But since I've gotten in the puppet game, like I've done my research on Jim Henson, on the guy that played Elmo too. He got a documentary on Netflix that was kind of cool.
Sure.
I did all my research on these guys and trying to get that behind the scenes look on the puppetry side of things too, besides just the stand up. It's cool. It's the puppet world is a whole nother world on its own as well. Like.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. So if you guys want to check this out, make sure you hit his Instagram. Make sure you hit his website, support the guy. If you haven't seen his Instagram page, it is hilarious. Very, very funny. And all around good dude. This is my guy, Joselito, the Puppeteer, aka Master. Check out his page. It'll be in the description section of the video. If you like what we're doing, make sure you hit that like button, you subscribe, and don't forget, business is always personal. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Hustle Man Show. Make sure you click that subscribe button, tap that bell For the audio experience to Spotify and SoundCloud, links are below. To follow us on Instagram and Twitter, it's @CapSwagUSA. Remember, business is always personal.